Hey folks, glad to see everyone on my YouTube channel, and today I have a very interesting topic, full Ruy Lopez repertoire for black. Now, a very surprising line, probably many of you would be surprised what I offer, because you probably haven't seen so many games in this variation, but it's something that can be very, very practical. Now, what can be like, who can benefit from this? I think many chess players. For instance, let's say you play other openings, you want Sicilian, you want something more positional maybe, and you start thinking about e4, e5. And in my opinion, the first thing that you need to consider, how you react against Ruy Lopez. Even though maybe Gioco Piano / Italian, much more popular nowadays, but I think Ruy Lopez, this is something that scares people with the complexity, and there are so many choices for black, what to choose and how to play all this pawn structure. So this is category number one. Now, second category, let's say you play e4, e5, already it's your repertoire, but Ruy Lopez bothers you because it's so complex, so much theory, very close positions in many lines, which system to choose. So that's the second category. And finally, we have something like, this system can be used as a very interesting, surprising weapon, obviously if you will be equipped with my super detailed file as always. So that's another category. So I think it's overall a lot of chess players can benefit from this material. But before we move into the details, let me remind you, please don't forget, guys, to subscribe to my YouTube channel. Click notification button so you will be the first one to know about new publications, so you can download the file or maybe get this idea, and before other people get to my site you can already maybe score some points. So that's that's one of the main things nowadays, to have these surprising ideas that nobody knows yet, and you can score points. The notification button, I appreciate if you can leave some comments. That helps with algorithms, YouTube algorithms, of course you know about that. Like the video if you enjoyed, and let's go. So as I mentioned, we are talking about Ruy Lopez, surprising, in some way surprising repertoire, full repertoire at the same time. And it's, wow, here's the system that I can offer you here. So first of all, we play a6, so we don't play Berlin. There are so much material published on Berlin, cannot compete with this. So after a6, obviously bishop a4 is the main move, but of course first we start with exchange variation, so it will be covered as well. So obviously we play dc6. Now we have different moves for white, but obviously without questions castle is the most challenging. Now just maybe like to mention a second alternative. Everything is covered, 3 alternatives to castle covered, so maybe mentioned very quickly d4, which continue to be very, very harmless because we take e d4, and after queen d4, let's say queen d4, knight d4, bishop d7, followed by queenside castle, we get this endgame. Some people might think it's like very drawish. I wouldn't say so. There are no forced draws here. It's just a complex endgame where we try to use our advantages, which is bishop pair and maybe majority on the queen side, which we start slowly advance. It's actually there is a lot of play. There is a lot of play in this endgame. And finally, of course, the biggest question comes after white castles. So which system to choose? Just a personal story, very interesting. When I used to work with Fabiano Caruana, 2009 to 2010, one of the training sessions, he surprised me. He lost the game to Arkady Naivich, one of the biggest experts in the world for exchange variation for white. And he lost very important game. He was still young. Arkady was much higher rated, but it was he felt very uncomfortable, and so he told me, Boris, let's have this training session solely discussing queen exchange variation of Ruy Lopez. And I think we covered basically all possibilities here. So he wanted to know every move for black, how to fight. He wanted to find comfortable positions for him. There was no specific conclusion. Black has many choices, many good moves. Old-fashioned f6 is totally fine. Bishop d6, bishop g4, of course, h3, h5, well known. But lately there is this interesting move that drew my attention when I saw a remarkable positional game between Arkady Nadic and Peter Svidler. It's, by the way, it's in my course, in my Chessable course, Grandmaster Thinking. It's not easy to impress me with some like positional chess, but this was like really masterpiece. So the goal is to reach position similar to this game. So now, what happens in this position? D4 is the only challenging move, in my opinion. I mean, I have coverage of two alternatives as well. For instance, if white goes for d3, very nice setup, knight e7, knight g6. If you have a question what to do with the knight on g8, since we have queen on f6, knight e7, g6, black is doing really good. In many positions, it's already a little bit better for black. Now, after d4, we have to take. Now, something like queen d4, it's again, we have similar position, bishop d7, queenside castle. This idea is a recurrent pattern here, so always good for black. Therefore, the way white is fighting for advantage is move bishop g5 with tempo. Why not to take a tempo? And maybe somewhat to punish black for early queen move in the opening. So we play queen d6, and knight d4 is the main line. Now, not much change after queen d4. We still do the same, bishop d7, and then we can play f6 followed by queenside castle, not a problem. Or maybe we'll start with c5 and so on. It's not a big deal. Now, e5, which seems kind of like tempting, actually kind of like exposes light squares, so our bishop might be much more active from c8. And after queen g6, queen d4, we just play bishop e7. So we offer in trade. We want to change this bishop, and very interesting play. And kind of like positionally e5 looks a little bit dubious. I don't think white is worse here with precise play, but black has no problems whatsoever, and strong players are not playing this. Finally, the main move, knight d4, and when I analyzed this game that I mentioned before, Nadic against Svidler, I was really surprised with the move bishop e7. Why I'm surprised with this move? Because usually black is trying to play for his bishop pair, try to benefit from bishop pair, usually in exchange Ruy Lopez positions. And here we offer trade, so we kind of like get rid of our advantage in some way, of our trump. But somehow it allows us quick development and very comfortable position. Now, not surprising that nowadays, if you see high-level games, the majority play bishop e3 in this position. Now, after bishop e7, so this is actually the game that I mentioned, knight e7. Different moves here, but the main move, knight c3. Once again, we don't castle kingside. We castle almost always queenside to play more ambitious. Now, different knight moves covered here, so 4 continuation, knight b3, knight e2, knight f3, as well as queen d2. In the game, knight e2 was played, if I remember correctly, so queenside castle. So we don't mind to have this trade because it improves our pawn structure. We undouble, no problems whatsoever, and I also like black chances a little bit more because we have a bishop. At some point we can open up the position f5 and so on. Objectively, of course, it's balanced. What white is playing usually is queen c1, knight g6. We don't need knight on e7. We need to improve queen e3 to pay attention to queen a7 threat, which will be devastating. And we allow this, of course, king b8, rook a d1, and queen e7. And so this is the position on the surface. It looks like white has accomplished something. White got rid of bishop pair. White has a better pawn structure, objectively speaking. But somehow, when white starts to advance in on the king side with and center f4, the pawn structure gets actually kind of like vulnerable. So f4, bishop c8. So highly recommend to check this game just for positional understanding, how to play this type of position. So actually, this appears to be even probably slightly better for black already, because somehow the center is quite vulnerable here with these pawns. And once again, amazing masterpiece, the model game, Arkady Nadic against Peter Svidler here. So this is one line, as I mentioned before. That's why bishop e7 is actually working great for black. Before it was some bishop d7 move, but then how to castle queenside, maybe we need to play f6 or knight f6. So much more convenient. After bishop e7, nowadays, all strong players practically play bishop e3. In this case, there are a couple of choices here, but I suggest to play knight f6, just kind of like straightforward. White has to play a3 because knight c3 would run into knight g4 and we'll get bishop on e3 as well as damaging the pawn structure, not acceptable for white. F3, we play c5. Now different knight moves, but usually b3 is a little bit problematic square because after b6 this knight is kind of like very well restricted and might be a problem in some endgames. Therefore, I think knight e2 is the best move, and we just play bishop e6. Again, queen d6, cd6 in most of the cases. Knight c3, queenside castle, no problems whatsoever. Very easy system. I know many players kind of like concerned about exchange because it's annoying, it's endgame, but that's just a very simple solution. Of course, white has ways to simplify, but overall there are no forced draws. It's still game, and very nice system in my opinion. Nowadays, probably the easiest solution out of all respectable moves for black. So now let's get now back to bishop a4 main line. So which system are we gonna offer? You would be surprised. I think like I believe 99% here watching this video will be surprised. Guys, great news for black. This crazy system playable for black, and right now nowadays, I mean, the theory is pretty good for black. So we just go b5, knight a5. We want to get light square bishop, something that you cannot achieve in any other line in Ruy Lopez, by the way. And in order for white to fight for advantage, white required to know like kind of like very good recommendations and very strong theory. So what do we have here? My coverage, as always, will be extremely detailed here. I want this line to take you for many years ahead, not like just you downloaded my file and then like in 1 year it's refuted. Of course not. So very detailed, some interesting new ideas covered for white. Now I would like to mention, so castle will be top choice. I would like to mention a few alternatives. For example, knight e5 is quite a very imbalanced position. So how we react here, we pick up the bishop, of course, we play queen g5. The best move, knight f3. I covered also knight g4, d4, mistake. Queen g2, rook g1, queen h3. Imagine like we get this type of position. It's actually very interesting, very double-edged, imbalanced. Many moves, 5 moves for white. I find c4 maybe the most critical. Bishop b7, knight c3, so there is a pressure. And then we can strike f5, so it's my new novelty, because before that I was not really satisfied. So obviously we play for our powerful bishop. If we can open up, it will be great. So that's just one of the ideas here. And so that was knight e5. I would like to mention also bishop f7, you know, like similar to Petrov variation, bishop f7. Not a bad idea, requires good knowledge from us. For instance, here I decided king e7 is fine, but I decided to go to e6. I decided to go to e6, and with the main line being d4, knight f6, and then we play calmly d6, and everything is fine. I think, objectively speaking, black chances are preferable here, but the position remains very complicated. It's not a losing line for white. It's a little bit dangerous for black if you don't know exactly how to react precisely, but once you study my file, you will be all set. So that's another line which is very important. Now, after knight a5, what else to mention? So d4, knight c3, those moves are possible as well. And one of the ideas that quite often happens here, so we play first bishop b7 in such a position, knight c3. Again, many other moves like castle and so on, and knight e7. So we don't go knight f6 if you have a question what to do with our knight, because it will run into e5, maybe pin bishop g5, so it's very problematic. But knight e7, knight in most of the cases heading to g6, we play d6, bishop comes to e7, very interesting setup, very imbalanced positions. Like if white doesn't know, it's possible to take over pretty quickly. Now, talking about castle main line, here we play d6. There are always choices, but we play d6. Now, c3 is harmless, rook e1 gives us some tempo. Once again, we play knight e7, and after d4 we take and we play knight g6, strengthening the pawn on e5. Serious line, but black seems like doing pretty well, equalizing here. Now, and finally, the main line d4, ed4. Now, theoretically, so everything is checked, knight d4, queen d4, c3, and the main line, probably the most dangerous line, recommended by Bulgarian Grandmaster Ivan Chipurinov in his modern chess course. And I have a huge respect to his materials, his publications, Rook e1. Now, old main line is knight d4. Here in this position, we play bishop b7. And now, again, many choices. I would like to mention like the very top choice for white, which is bishop d2, forcing trade. So one of the ideas that white can play knight b3, recapture knight b3, after bishop e7 to play knight a5. And get rid of our bishop, too dangerous to take on a4, obviously. We just play queen c8, then we castle. We need a couple of accurate moves, and I think no problems in this variation. Now, also in order to play this variation and to play this unusual idea, knight b3 followed by knight a5, one has to know very well the theory. And finally, the main line, which is rook e1. So obviously, white is trying to take advantage of better development, maybe some e5 in the future. So we have to be very precise here. So first of all, let's eliminate this guy, knight b3, a b3, c5. So the most challenging, c5. Now, c3 is the best move. Now, we shouldn't be greedy. We shouldn't take on c3. Very, very dangerous. So we just need to complete development. Bishop b7. First move, cd4. Now, bishop e7, knight f6. Approximately on the same level. We play bishop e7. Knight c3. Knight f6. So this is very rich position, like in general, with this variation for both sides. White has some ideas that have not played yet, for sure. So, recommendation of Chipurinov is knight h4, knight is heading to f5, looks very, very dangerous. We strike immediately in the center with b4. Knight d5 is the move. I checked, similarly tempting knight f5, b takes c3, knight g7, king d7, definitely requires a lot of analysis, but this position seems like okay for black. Our king, I think, if necessary, will be pretty safe on the queen side, c7 or c8. Meanwhile, we got g5. Objectively, again, seems to me white is better, but you know, requires a little bit work here. So, knight d5, knight takes d5. The knight is kind of like, well, right now hanging, but e d5, of course, solution. It's knight f5. It doesn't matter. So actually, my move order is after knight d5, knight f5. It's just a transposition. So we'll go through this move order. So this time, dangerous to play knight c7. So this type of positions look like it's possible to play, but white seems to me objectively better. So we need, in my opinion, to settle for castle, e d5, and rook e8. Now, also, I analyze, and it seems bishop f6 holding pretty well. But my main recommendation will be rook e8. And after bishop f4 to play bishop f8. And this is the line. We have a bishop pair. White, of course, is very active. Similarly dangerous knight on f5. I'll have very concrete approach, very detailed. Not so many games here, but I was definitely checking what Chipurinov recommends here. So I think you will be all set in this critical line. And that's it, what I wanted to mention, guys. So as always, there are two options. You can go to my webpage, ask-avrukh.com, where you find detailed PGN file. Download it and enjoy this variation. Or, like already in this video, I presented a lot of ideas and critical lines, so you can do your own research and using my critical suggestion and have a very interesting variation at your disposal. And I would like to mention also one fact that I was promising that my 30% discount on the files which are like above $25, it should have ended on February 13th, but due to technical issues, it still goes on, and well, it will go for one more week with publication of this file with reduced price, and hopefully you can enjoy. And if you like my other work, so that's great opportunity for you to save a little bit money. Now, thanks for watching, guys. Any questions, please leave your comments. I respond to everyone. I try to respond unless I'm missing this. I got notifications as well. And Good luck with your chess, and I'll see you soon, hopefully.